thousand lives. Walking round the food kingdom, satisfy my mind. Dancing nurses.
This is Murder Hornets World War III, soundtrack of 2020 for a lot of us, and a more than adequate replacement for any Neil Young tracks you may have lost. Sending out live stream notifications. We'll be right back. I'll put a link to One-Eyed Jack in the chat. Okay, so 9:46 p.m. Trying to get this thing started a little bit earlier each night, but we're creeping down the clock. It is February the 16th, 2022. A meteor smashes through doghouse, almost kills German Shepherd. Just looking at my notes, and it's like I got a few stories here about dogs. There's that one about Biden. How many of you heard Biden today? I don't know if it was a comedy sketch or if he was going off teleprompter, but Joe Biden was rambling about leaving a dead dog on some woman's front porch. Let's go ahead and start with that. This is your hologram in chief, CGI Joe, and his 33-second rambling story about handling a dead woman's dog.
A woman said to me, obviously not of the same persuasion as I was politically, called me and said, "There's a dead dog on my lawn." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "Have you called the county?" He said, "Yes, they're not here." And I said, "Well, I'll get him in the morning." She said, "I want it removed now. I pay your salary." So I went over. I picked it up. She said, "I want it out of my front yard." I put it on her doorstep. I got a call one night.
So he put it on her doorstep.
Got a call one night.
That's your president. So again, let's go ahead and see who's in chat, then we'll continue. Joined by Evil Coyote, Patrick78, Zin Valis, Innocent Princess. Yeah, Innocent Princess and Evil Coyote side by side. Tricky Who, AJ206, Truth, VJ McDirtywork. Thanks everyone for coming. I sent out live stream notifications via text messages. And also by email notification. So if you're on the Patreon or the Infinite Plane Society website, you will get the notifications. And then if you miss anything, you'll get the re-premiere the next day. You'll get the archives. I'll be opening up phones here in just a moment. Lately we've been talking about how space junk was a hypothetical situation and didn't actually exist until this year. And it started with the vaxing of the space station when it got struck by a piece of space junk through its arm on their mission Celestial Immunity, where they were studying the effects of vaccinations in space or whatever. So now that these things exist, they're canceling spacewalks because of space junk. NASA is now claiming that these CubeSats that Musk has put up into space are endangering us all. And since I've been speaking about this, and I said, we're going to see CubeSats falling from the sky. That's part of Musk's evil plan. It's given away by the narrative subtext connecting the SpaceX story to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy story. And sure enough, 40, I'm surprised it wasn't 42. 40 of these CubeSats supposedly fell from the sky, if you believe the CGI reports. So I'm looking at this as, okay, this is all going according to their diabolical plan. Nothing here is an accident. So now we have meteors next on the menu. You know, people are kind of over the whole virus thing, and they've kind of really milked that psyop as much as they can. Got this meme today. I can't believe it's HIV variant already. I still have my Omicron decorations up. And I'm sure you all feel the same way. It's like they're just rushing through these things, and it's because they don't have the impact they used to. So now it's time for deep impact, meteor. Meteor smashing through houses. So this is from Futurism.com. Meteor smashes through a dog's house and almost kills the German Shepherd. So this is from Futurism.com, a site that's usually dedicated to telling us that the sky is falling and meteors are coming down to hit us. In fact, Futurism did an entire article bitching about how all the other science magazines are constantly misreporting incoming meteor strikes for clicks. So they said these are clickbait scientists or clickbait science websites that just kind of hype up the idea that we're about to be killed by something from space, because it is easy to get traffic, but we can trust them and their reports. You can trust Futurism. So again, Futurism, this is from earlier today. Meteor smashes through a doghouse and almost killed a German Shepherd. So what happened? This happened before. This was an earlier event. There's a 7-inch hole in the roof, but now they're auctioning off the actual doghouse because it was touched by something from heaven, from space. A part of a shower of exotic stone meteorites loaded with organic compounds crashed through his doghouse, barely missing him. So his name is Rocky, interestingly enough. Rocky. Anyway, so Rocky survived, but now apparently the debris that almost hit him is one of the most researched collections of meteorites of all time. And so I think that this house is going to sell for up to $300,000. And do you remember last year I was talking about how there aren't really any examples of meteors striking people's homes? And like the next day, you had this 33-year-old coffin maker who claims that a meteor hit his house. And then he went and he sold it for, I don't know, was it several $1,000,000? Here it is. Joshua Hudagulung, 33, was working on a coffin outside his house in Kolang, North Sumatra, when he heard a loud boom and decided to investigate. So anyway, the coffin maker in Indonesia found a meteor and became an instant millionaire. A humble Indonesian coffin maker. Wouldn't he have been an overnight it says here overnight millionaire from this thing. $2 million. Cashed it in. And of course, just happened to be 33. I just don't know why he was having hard times financially anyway. Wouldn't coffin makers be doing exceptionally well during a pandemic? I know crisis actors did very well in 2020, as did online retailers. Polecat78, dead dogs are not a vibe. Yeah, Joe is interestingly funny in that little comedy bit. I don't know who wrote it for him. He's definitely reading off a script, but they rehearsed it. I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing, though, wasn't CGI. And he'll get funnier and more coherent as we get closer to the midterms. All right, going through comments here. Mom with Son says, was his name Sirius? Well, you know, Biden has a dog named Major, whose birthday is the 17th of January. Same birthday as Jim Carrey, someone heavily associated with Sirius. In fact, in one of those movies, he's a dog catcher, but always the Sirius references, the dog star references. And also, it's Betty White's birthday. And Biden has these weird kind of connections with dogs all the time. It was Major that approached him with the ball while he was taking a shower. And then he chased Major down the hall, and he slipped because he was wet and naked, and he twisted his ankle while grabbing and tugging on Major's tail. I mean, that's why he came out with the ankle bracelet. And it's a very weird story.
A woman said to me,
and I remember thinking, this has got to be a joke. Joe Biden, ankle twisted, naked shower. Just my search terms here. Biden says he broke foot after shower when he pulled dog's tail. He slipped while playing with Major and twisted his ankle. So anyway, my point being, when Jim Carrey in The Truman Show picked up the satellite or the stage light that represented the dog star, it said Canis Majoris. But anyway, yes, from RT.com, is Joe a 4-year-old? Biden offers a bizarre story of breaking his foot, saying he pulled his dog's tail while getting out of his shower. Running around the bathroom. What happened, and this is a direct quote, I got out of the shower and the pup dropped a ball in front of me. He added that the dog wanted him to grab the ball. Man, this guy lives in a cartoon. So then I grabbed the ball like this and he ran. The president said he ran after the dog and grabbed its tail, which caused the dog to slide on a throw rug. As I tripped on the rug that he slid on, and this is what happened, oh man, not a very exciting story. So anyway, this is Joe Biden lifting one of his legs up, so you can see that it's damaged for the cameras. And I'm like, what is the meaning of this song? I mean, this story. This is so. If you ask me, this is like pure fantasy. It's got to be some kind of a joke. And I think I figured out what the joke actually is. I believe it's a reference to Wag the Dog. Ian Cheong, today's headline, Naked Joe Biden chases dog around in the bathroom. Yeah, so I'm thinking this is a Wag the Dog reference. Wag the Dog, of course, being a movie about politicians creating distractions. And at this time, you had a crack pipe Biden, a Hunter Biden, and his laptop, which was apparently going to be very damaging for his election. And this kind of took everybody's mind right off it. It was a perfect Wag the Dog scenario. Evil Coyote says meteor-proof dog houses should start trending. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I mean, I've been saying, helmets for space junk, and now we're thinking mandatory helmets for the triple vaxxed, just as a safety precaution, for their own safety, mandatory helmets, even in bed now because, of course, meteors. But why not have some kind of protective shell over your dog houses? And over your beds. Just something you put over your bed, like a Kevlar reinforced kind of covering. Innocent Princess says, why use Google? You should use Brave or DuckDuckGo. I found Brave to be clunky and slow, and the DuckDuckGo logo offends me. And I can't say why, but there's somebody in my Discord server who pointed something out about it. I might be willing to check it, but I'm not under any kind of illusion that you can somehow avoid the all-seeing eye of Sauron. I mean, they know everything. So, hey, for the last couple of years, you've had Alex Jones begging for money because he's being persecuted by the Sandy Hookers, who just got a $73 million settlement. $73 million settlement from Remington, which tells you that Remington is in on the scam. Or they're really dumb and they can't see through some basic crisis actors. I mean, very, very rudimentary. I would say that the crisis actors that we see today are much better than those from back then, which is why we're constantly referencing them. And I apologize for the crisis actor on the screen. That would be Bill Jones or Alex Hicks. Now, again, I brought this up because he's been begging for money because he's being persecuted, etc. Well, it turns out, over the last 3 years, he's raked in $165 million selling, well, Sex Scoop. And by Sex Scoop, if you didn't know, the same supplements that he sells as Super Male Vitality are actually it's the same formula that Gwyneth Paltrow sells, and she calls it Sex Scoop, and it's for women. So yeah, Bill Hicks has made $165 million worth of Sex Scoop in the last 3 years. He doesn't need your money for his legal fees. Zinvela says, I just looked at the Duck Duck logo and I saw it right away. Interesting. Well, look, I don't think it's... My whole thing is this. We're front row. We're observing the world stage and all of its various psyops. Front row is as close as we can possibly get, close enough to throw the popcorn and actually hit the screen. So I think it's important to stay on Google. It's important to stay on YouTube. We know it's the beast. We know, but we can't pretend like we're going to go off the grid. Okay, let's move on to the next topic here. So many things to cover. I didn't get a cover last night. But let's stick to, okay, the next one. We talked about the pro-mask mandate marchers. So apparently they're not pro-lockdown marchers or pro-mandatory lockdown, nor are they pro-mandatory social distancing. Nope, it's all about the face diaper. You have people at the University of Nevada in Reno marching around chanting for a reinstatement of mandatory masks. And it shows you, again, that's not what you would do if you were actually in it. If you were actually terrorized, oh, these people are going to breathe and kill us all, you would not be out there marching and chanting. In fact, if you recall, in the summer of 2020, they said that speaking out loud, that singing would no longer be permissible. You know, how quickly people forget. You know, the collective mind has like this, there is no attention span. Like collectively, we have this attention span of a goldfish. It's TikTok length. It's getting worse. But anyway, it's really convenient for the powers that be, of course, because we don't remember any of the indignities they inflict upon us, and then a few months later, they just reset the game. Okay, this is from a podcast called QAnon Anonymous. And I'm going to go ahead and play a section here. Flat Earth Ain't Going Away by Kelly Whale. Now, Kelly Whale is the one who wrote the book called Off the Edge. And this is a book that's coming out in about a week. And it's been reviewed. They mentioned us in a review. They mentioned Infinite Plane Society as dissenters or something. But it's going to be out in about a week. And here's a clip from a podcast she was on, I listened to this morning. And I just want to basically say this. The author of the book is a pervert.
Or I can see boats well past where the Earth's curvature should obscure them. He would lay down on the ice during winter and say he could see ice skaters at the end of the canal, and he shouldn't be able to do that. We can pretty much attribute this to him lying or him.
Okay, so she's talking about what she believes to be the origin of the flat Earth theory, Samuel Rowbotham, and she says that he was lying about the Bedford level experiment. Again, her book's about to come out, and I think it's going to be a behind the curve level hit. It's already number 1 in a number of categories. But now listen to what she says here about how you can just see the curve.
Being mistaken, because everybody can observe the Earth's curvature over a couple miles. It only takes a couple miles for the Earth to curve about like 8 feet down, at which point you wouldn't be able to see an ice skater.
Okay, so it only takes a couple miles for the Earth to curve down, at which point you wouldn't see an ice skater on the frozen canal at where the Bedford level experiment takes place. So Samuel Rowbotham was lying. That's her whole point here. He was lying about seeing things beyond what the Earth's curvature formula would suggest would be possible. Well, here she is, the author of this book, saying that flat earthers are out of their minds and are dangerous for society. You know, here she is saying that, yeah, you can see the curve within a couple of miles, after a couple of miles, about 8 feet of curve. Well, I'm sorry, but that's been contradicted by so many observations. Let me play this again.
I can see people, or I can see boats well past where the Earth's curvature should obscure them. He would lay down on the ice during winter and say he could see ice skaters at the end of the canal, and he shouldn't be able to do that. We can pretty much attribute this to him lying or him being mistaken, because everybody can observe the Earth's curvature over a couple miles. It only takes a couple miles for the Earth to curve about like 8 feet down, at which point you wouldn't be able to see an ice skater. But that
Okay, so somebody needs to send Kelly Wheel a P900 and send her to the beach, because she's got this misconception that if you're 2 miles down the road, you're over the curve. She's what we would call a curvert. Kelly the curvert. And we know who she is because she used to spy on us in our Discord server. And I know she said a lot of not nice things about a lot of people that we know, which, you know, we do too. Not faulting her for that. She's probably correct in most of her assessments. She's wrong about some things that I have to point out, but we'll address this once the book is out and I've been able to read it. So if you want to read her book, it's called Off the Edge. I recommend it. I mean, just based off the back, I saw a mention of neo-Nazi rappers, plural. So I'm like, okay, well, how many neo-Nazi rappers do you know? I can name 3 off the top of my head. Let's see. Oh, there was this scam I wanted to talk about with Melania Trump. Melania Trump scamming the NFT world. So apparently she had someone else, and this is provable, it's just right there on the wallet, make a purchase of an NFT at a crazy price that nobody would have paid. It's kind of a similar to, on eBay, you had this thing called, I think it was bid shielding or something, where someone could create a third account and then raise the price of something, artificially raise the price, which is not permitted. Now, this is called wash trading. So, according to this report, Melania Trump sold her NFT to herself for $170,000, presumably because nobody would pay that much for a Melania Trump NFT. Yep, the source of funds for the winning bid in Melania Trump's first NFT auction appears to be the creators of the project themselves. A series of blockchain transactions show that the cryptocurrency used to purchase Trump's NFT came from a wallet that belongs to the entity that originally listed the project for sale. What an embarrassment. Trump listed the winner of the auction on her website, along with the bid history, which shows that the NFT sold for $185,000 3 weeks ago. The collection is titled Head of State, and it was one of many planned auctions that Trump said that she would release at, quote, regular intervals. So if you want to bid on these, someone else in her circle is going to probably bid it up there to $180,000, which is about $179,999 more than I would pay for it, and it creates this perception. This is very typical of the Trumps. Russian scammer, exactly. Yeah, what do you guys all think about Kelly the Pervert, by the way? I mean, I don't know if we should even, I don't even think she would entertain the idea. She could be wrong. I listened to the whole podcast. So if you want to call in and talk about Kelly the Pervert or Melania Trump and this NFT scamming, which the term for it, when you buy your own, you trade your own NFTs to artificially create the perception that people care about it, it's called wash trading. So if you want to talk about Melania's wash trading, that's just dirty. And then we find out that Trump rips up all the paperwork. They shredded everything. So I happen to think that we may see another Watergate type scandal, not from Clinton, but from the Trump side. It's just not looking good. Although I admit it's all theater. It has to be. Look at this here. Another thing. Kate Perry with AIDS tests on her earrings. Okay, Patrick says Kelly's either a total simpleton or a curve perv. Right, that's what I'm wondering. Is like, who still thinks that 2 miles away there's 8 feet of curvature? If it was that easy to see, you could prove it with a laser pen and a piece of plywood or whatever with a hole drilled in it, like Jaron did on Behind the Curve, which he didn't. But that's what they made it look like. Oh, you can just go prove it. Just go out on a flat country road at night and bring out a laser pen and you can see if there's a curve. And it doesn't really work that way. And we have way too many examples of videos of boats going over the horizon to your perception, but then with a telescopic lens, they're brought back into full view. And they're not tipping away. They're not obscured at all. It's just a matter of they're too far for you to see. It doesn't mean they're over a hump. People used to make this argument, I guess they still do. Oh, well, of course we know it's a ball because all the ancient Greeks saw boats go over the horizon. Therefore, we all knew. Yeah, because the 100 monkey syndrome or something, somebody somewhere learns something and everybody just simultaneously figures it out. Like, that doesn't even make sense. And I don't even think that the globe was a thing in China until like the 17th century, if you go by conventional history, so that doesn't even make sense. But anyway, if the Greeks saw boats go over the horizon, well, then they misinterpreted the limitations of their eyesight as a ball. So they got the right answer for the wrong reasons. Not very scientific, and you can't cite that. We're joined by that SOB, Jordan, Portal Complex, Strawberry Blind, Rourke 66. Jordan and that SOB are two different people. I wasn't calling Jordan that. Lean Dion says it's when the Jesuits got there, apparently. Oh, that's right. And then someone stuck a stick in the sand. Greeks did that too. Which tells you the sun is local, or very far, as they say, with a ball the size and shape they say. Although there's so many contradictions. I mean, the whole thing's comical. What's at the edge of the universe? Answer me that. Before you laugh at the edge of the earth, tell us what's at the edge of the universe. Because most people who believe in the universe as it's supposed to be believed in don't know that it's flat, or that galaxies are flat, or the solar system's pretty much flat, I suppose with the exception of like Pluto. Okay, we talked about Joe Biden and his bizarre story about leaving a dead dog at a woman's front door. Let me just play the last third of that clip there, in case you missed it.
So I went over. I picked it up. She said, I want it out of my front yard. I put it on her doorstep. I got a call one night.
Put it on her doorstep. What does that even mean? Shout out to Chief Crow from that SOB. Okay, we've been talking about the humble Indonesian coffin maker turned into an overnight millionaire after a 4.5 billion year old meteorite worth $2 million crashed into his roof. And then the meteor that went through the doghouse, almost killing a German shepherd named Rocky. And that doghouse is now going to be sold for $300,000. You can sell these space rocks for as much as you can get, but if you get moon rocks, they will send a SWAT team to set up a sting, and they will humiliate you and beat you outside of Denny's until you give up the moon rock. They actually do have a SWAT team to protect moon rocks. Probably because they don't want you to find out what those things are actually made out of. How can you still believe the conventional stories about the moon when it's admitted that Buzz Aldrin and the others gave petrified wood to the government of Holland and they called these things moon rocks? For all we know, these are stones passed by Buzz Aldrin, and they're just claiming, oh yeah, it's from the moon. So let's look this up really quick. NASA's SWAT team. Just so you know, because the woman that they accosted, she was a grandmother who basically tried to sell a piece of moon rock, so they set up a sting. They cuffed her outside of Denny's. They held her so long she soiled her pants. 75-year-old woman totally embarrassed by this detainment for possessing a moon rock. Neil Armstrong gift sees NASA SWAT team detain 75-year-old. Now, she was selling the rock to pay for her grandson's medical bills because her husband died, and she couldn't afford his medical bills. Her name was Joanne Davis, 75-year-old grandmother from Lake Elsinore, California, targeted by NASA's SWAT team because she possessed a real moon rock. Like, what are they trying to hide? What is it that they're covering up that makes the moon rock such a sensitive thing? So she tried to sell the rice-sized piece of moon rock. So this is a really tiny piece. Anyway, she was told, you'll go to federal court, you'll go to federal jail. She was held in a parking lot, detained by a NASA agent, and her detention was criticized for being unreasonably prolonged and unnecessarily degrading. 2 hours in urine-soaked pants, according to mercurynews.com. And her husband, Robert, was given the rock as a gift in a paperweight. Now, the thing is, it says here she's 80 next month when this article came out. And she did file her lawsuit against NASA, but since then her grandson has died. So it's kind of a tragic story. But now you know, if you got a piece of moon rock, don't try to sell it. Innocent Princess says petrified wood. Well, that's the thing. And so if people say that you're crazy for doubting the moon landing, just look up Buzzed Aldrin, petrified wood. There's no debunking of this thing. Moon rock turns out to be fake. The tests concluded the rock was petrified wood. This is from phys.org. The moon rock given to Holland by Neil. The moon rocks presented to Holland by the Apollo 11 astronauts 30 years ago as petrified wood, shocked scientists found. I'm not shocked by that, but then I'm not a scientist. Yep, again, the lunar rock, valued at 308,000 pounds, was in fact petrified wood. Likely from Arizona. So there you have it. So what's more likely then? What's more likely in your mind? That you're looking at something earthly or something from this from the moon? I mean, just given this basic fact, what's more likely? Like, doesn't this just throw everything in favor of the whole thing being a hoax? If one tiny part of it's a hoax, it's all likely a hoax. When it's something like this, and this is something that's quite sensitive, sort of like if there's one crisis actor at a scene, well, then the whole thing's just invalidated. It's got to be a movie. So it's all or none with me. This to me says, okay, well, if you don't have questions about the moon landing, then you're left with this. You must therefore accept that the moon is made of petrified wood. So there you have it. The moon is made out of wood. And if you don't believe me, you're anti-science, you're a flat earther, and you're a spreader of dangerous dismiss and malinformation. We have a wooden moon. Petrified wood. Which, I don't know what it means, where it came from. It must have been a tree at some point. But yeah, the moon turns out to be made of petrified wood. It's either that or the astronauts are lying. Take your pick. Okay, so let's go back to, we were talking about Kelly Weil and her assertion that anybody can see the curve of the Earth within a couple of miles. That is just so wrong. You can't even correct it, can you? Innocent Princess says, has anyone seen the advertisement that sells dinosaur bones? I keep commenting on those ads that dinos are fake. Yeah, the reason why they have you believe in dinosaurs, if you ask me, it's about trauma bonding and mind control, mass mind control, MK Ultra, if you will. The way it works is, before you're learning to talk or before you even can construct sentences, you're bonding with these magical, colorful, dragon-like creatures, dinosaurs. But they're represented in very loving human ways. They're personified. They can speak. Got Barney, the purple one that hugs you. They're all over the room. The toys, the children's clothes. It's pretty much dinosaurs and aliens. But you don't see a lot of meteors. You might have some kind of solar system art hanging from the ceiling in the kids' rooms, science-y stuff, but you don't really see the meteors or the dinosaurs dying. They save that until you get into school. Then you get into school and you're pretty much by then you know you live in a ball, you know about these dinosaurs, and then they're like, yeah, mass extinction. Rocks from the sky, killed them all. So right then, one of your first lessons that you grasp from the very beginning is that something that used to exist no longer exists. We're not the first residents on this ball. And of course, this is predictive programming for later on in life, because I think the falling rock agenda is, it may not be a singular one-time thing, but if you notice, they have been using the excuse of it to build up this infrastructure for fighting space wars. And I don't think these things are coincidental. Okay, let's see here. Lean Dion says, Barney got obliterated and we will too. Yep, that's the idea. And of course, it sets the precedent that, well, it's based on evolution and that entire paradigm, which, whether you believe in it or not, I think it's more political than not that they want you to accept certain things like dinosaur juice. I'm going to run out of dinosaur juice, limited supply, and therefore we need to move to electric cars. You know, everything's been, I think, part of driving us towards this idea of sustainability, which means we have to let go of our private property and our reliance on fossil fuel. and free markets, and really free thought in general. If you notice, there seems to be a trend here. I think the new ideal is the movie Equilibrium, where they say that ideas and art are too upsetting for society, so they have to kind of get rid of anything at all. It's a 2002 movie with Christian Bale. It says, in a future where all forms of feeling are illegal, a man in charge of enforcing the law rises to overthrow the state and the system. But the idea here is that the regime has eliminated war by suppressing books, memes, or art, and music. So they forbid books, art, and music. And this is to reduce people having emotions and feelings. So nobody gets triggered, so no snowflakes get melted. And even now, the DHS has put a hit piece out on threat actors, sowers of mis, dis, and malinformation, MDM, which are the new weapons of mass destruction. That's how they're looking at misinformation or just memes, but specifically those that cause people to doubt the authorities. So even causing doubt is now seen as some kind of a threat to national security. It's worse than a hate crime, in fact. Tricky Who says, I got dinosaur juice from my petrified moon rock. When, just a few months ago, the scientists were telling us that there are dinosaur bones on the moon. So maybe they ought to go up to the moon for some dino juice. And the way that happened, and this is the story, 66.6 million years ago, a rock the size of Mount Everest hit the Earth, and it came in with such velocity that it punctured a hole in the atmosphere. And so outer space was in direct contact with the Earth in that area, and then before it closed back up, there was a super soaker-like effect as a large chunk of our ocean sprayed out into space all over the moon. And of course, with that, a lot of dinosaurs made the trip. This is from iflscience.com. We are pleased to inform you that there are dinosaur remains on the moon. Now, if you're new to this material, if you've never questioned the moon landing, if you believe in NASA, etc., I have to give you a disclaimer. What you're looking at on the screen is an artist's representation. That is not an actual photograph of a dinosaur on the moon. They're not saying that dinosaurs are alive up there, which would be a good movie. But they're saying that there are dinosaur bones. It says most likely chunks of dinosaurs up there on the moon. Before humankind took their one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, dinosaurs made it to our satellite. Although their procedures weren't quite as safe and rigorous as ours. They didn't so much step foot on the moon as sprayed themselves across it like water from a super soaker. And then you also have astrocrete, another thing. This is what they really could do with dissidents. Grind them up into astrocrete. I'm going through your comments here. Phase Polarizer says back then the moon was a lot closer. Has anyone here seen Moonfall? There's actually quite a few movies about the moon falling down. Like more than a few. Like it makes me kind of uncomfortable. Do they know something? Now the guy who did Moonfall also did Independence Day, and he vowed to never do movies that bring up conspiracy theories again, because the whole premise of Moonfall comes from a book called Who Built the Moon. And I think David Icke even spent a lot of time with that book as a source. And the idea was that the moon is in fact a Death Star-like craft, and that it might actually be active and it's just watching us and whoever's in it. That it might have been that it's hollow, and that it might even be the source of our oceans. That it arrived here and it dumped a bunch of water, presumably squids, onto the surface of the Earth. That's right, squids are from space. They all got dumped into Point Nemo, just like H.P. Lovecraft wrote about. River of Junk says, the theory of the dinosaurs dying from a meteor was only present 30 years ago. I think I saw something saying that climate change killed the dinosaurs. Let me see here. When dinosaurs ruled the Earth, the climate was most likely hot and humid. Here it is. Climate change pushed dinosaurs into decline. Ancient global warming spikes. Unbroken record of climate change. So what was going on? Were people around back then? Like in the Flintstones? Before they figured out how to recycle and how to live sustainably? What a joke that whole story is. And if you didn't know, they're gonna criminalize this soon. So just say it while you can. I mean, it's not that it's a hoax. It's that global warming is a modern flood myth, and it's used to give the priesthood the pretext to invade everyone's life and regulate their behaviors, their so-called carbon footprint, which is really just your trail of wickedness, misdeeds, or the actions that they're judging as misdeeds. So you weren't sustainable here, you did something here, you took an unnecessary flight over there. Now, of course, if you're Leonardo DiCaprio and you have a mega yacht and you have an extraordinarily large dinosaur-sized carbon footprint, you get a pass because you're a movie star. Now, Leonardo DiCaprio does have baby feet, so he does have, in fact, tiny actual footprints, but that does nothing to mitigate his massive carbon footprints. But yeah, the celebrities get a pass. The priesthood, they always get to live lavishly. They're always fat and rich and covered in jewels, telling you to live poor. Nothing's changed. Look at Al Gore. And I'm not convinced that Greta Thunberg isn't just some animatronic avatar, puppeteered by Al Gore. And speaking of, this is all just coincidence, I'm sure. But Greta Thunberg's birthday is January the 3rd, 2003. So she's 19 now, which explains why CNN has nothing to do with her anymore. So she's 19, but you know who else is also 19? Kyle Rittenhouse. And his birthday, January the 3rd, 2003. So Kyle and Greta have the same birthday. How does that happen? Here you have the two most polarizing child actors or child activists in politics today, representing the left and the right, the far left and the far right, in fact, the fringes, the faces of the fringe, the most controversial faces that reach those demographics. And they were born on the same day. So what does that tell you? I mean, I don't know if it means anything more than just careful scripting. This isn't something that's been publicized. This is something that we put together, but we found out that this is in fact true. I mean, it's some kind of bizarre statement, a coincidence, or something else. Let's see here. I'm going through your comments. Jungle Jim says, I saw a video not long ago that demonstrated the relationship between death and stonework, grave, gravel, cemetery, cement, mortar, mortuary. The idea of astrocrete is recycled itself. Okay, so astrocrete is the idea that, well, NASA and the scientists are going to go up there and on Mars or on the moon, they're going to mix recycled blood and everything else from you into the regolith, into the dust, and from this they will create astrocrete. And so I'm thinking, wait, if they're going to have you donating blood in order to create bricks for the structure wherever you're living, well, to me, I'm thinking this is a form of self-sacrifice. I think it's the same ritual that bonds you to the community. It's a new blood and soil type bonding. It really does establish that you're the founders of a new colony. So here we have an article from Earth Sky. Futuristic space concrete using astronauts' blood. Astronauts' blood can be used to make concrete on Mars. They should just start taking donations now. If you can go to Mars, you could pay your way. Just start donating blood once a week or so. Create some bricks so you can go build your structures when you get up there. But I thought this was more theater than not, kind of pushing the idea here that going to space means self-sacrifice. You're giving up your earthly existence, you're giving up your freedom, and you're going into a commune in space. So it's kind of a ritualistic sacrifice for the collective. And I'm thinking, well, this could also explain, or this also kind of goes along with Soylent Green. And 2022 is the year that Soylent Green takes place. So Astrocrete could be Soylent Red. that what you're looking at here is the setting of a premise that the individual is expendable, the group is the sole unit of value, and it's time for cannibalism. Just like in Wall-E, Soylent Green, these movies or I think Snowpiercer, where you just start eating the dead. And what's the difference between eating and recycling? I mean, we're talking about the same concept, basically. Eating the dead. And this is just one step away from it. You're one step away from convincing people, yeah, just take one of my arms. And then maybe next year take one of my legs. I mean, you're walking people down that path. Going through your comments. Now, okay, about Astrocrete. So this is not a new concept. Someone in the comments said it's recycled. I'm pretty sure that blood has been used in cement. I think someone sent me an article about this. I don't want to get the wrong piece of architecture. Ancient Chinese buildings are held together with mortar made with blood. I've heard about this. The Great Wall made of flesh and blood. I don't know how true this is, but I have seen some articles suggesting that this has been used in the past. So I'm thinking, well, okay, the entire idea of getting you to Mars, if you ask me, is a communist revolution. And it's changing you from the inside out. It gets you to accept the premise that the earth is doomed because capitalism is not green, it's not sustainable. How many billionaires in mega yachts can we actually sustain? None. We just can't. And if we allow the capitalists to go to space and become trillionaires, then you're going to have Bezoses and Musks and Bransons popping up all over. So this is what the space war is about right now. This is why the global warming situation has become really one of the main topics now. It's almost effaced COVID. They're saying pollution kills more people than COVID. This is why the movie Don't Look Up and Moonfall both present you with science as savior. Moonfall has a 33-year-old who plays the scientist savior. Don't Look Up has Leonardo DiCaprio as a scientist trying to save us, but no, we listen to the capitalists and the world gets destroyed. So I've been saying the idea of environmentalism, of course, is green. It's basically green Marxism or watermelon Marxism, where they're just using environmentalism and saving the planet as an excuse to regulate and control the marketplace. Watermelon, green on the outside, red on the inside. So even people who see through this still look at the space program as the ultimate testament to the success of free market capitalism and that it's all market-driven technology and that this is freedom getting us to the moon. And I'm suggesting that no, that's a major ruse right there. That the space program is really a stalking horse for advancing radical environmentalism and sustainability. The idea of living in a domed enclosure where you don't travel around, all your work is done by robots, you spend your time terraforming, you spend your time on Mars, underground, not being a Martian. Everything's being done through robots. It's subterranean. And that's what they're getting us to accept as a premise for Earth itself, that you can't really continue to live and travel as we have. We have to be locked down. Civilization of stasis. When that hacker shut down Give, Send, Go, where the Canadian truckers were raising their money, they replaced the website with Elsa from Frozen. Not a coincidence. Elsa is Greta. Frozen and the idea of freezing civilization is pretty much what they're about. COVID was a convenient excuse to implement a lot of these hardcore green agendas. And you see people are begging for it now. They're demanding mandatory masks. It's like, please demand mandatory climate lockdowns and start with yourselves. But they don't work that way. They have to regulate everyone else first. Tominoid says Roland Emmerich also did climate disaster movies Day After Tomorrow, 2012 with Cusack and Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko is a fascinating one, has many examples of predictive programming that reference Donald Trump of all things. And it foreshadows the year 2020 and has a lot of 9/11 connections. So Donnie Darko and Vanilla Sky are two movies that reference 9/11 and COVID and the lockdowns, 2020 itself. So we'll study these ones. The director of Independence Day also did Wicker Park. Anyway, I'll look into that one. I think Independence Day is probably the most significant one in this context because people use that movie and the graphics to describe what they saw on 9/11. Oh, it's like the movie Independence Day. And one of the authors of one of these sites that I reference frequently, it's chartword.com. On that site, he put this collection of observations together connecting Kubrick to 9/11, suggesting that Stanley Kubrick was in fact the architect of 9/11 and how it played out, the director. And he even went so far as to suggest that Kubrick faked his death so he could focus his time on 9/11 as his magnum opus before he died, whenever he died for real, but that his death was faked. And he was undercover, more or less, working on this big production. So I think this is noteworthy that the special effects director for 2001: A Space Odyssey, Douglas Trumbull, just died, just as we're about to enter the follow-up to 9/11, which I think is going to be the space war agenda. And sure enough, right after he dies, we have the 40 satellites fall from the sky, and it's been announced that a piece of Chinese space junk is going to hit the moon. That's a reoccurring theme, by the way. The moon being hit. Moon fall. I have a few ideas as to what that may mean. I think it might actually reference a market crash. McDirtyWork says, good evening, everyone. Oh yeah, hey, Tominoid mentioned something here. Yeah, thanks for joining. And if you're not getting text message notifications, get on the newsletter and you'll get the link so that you're here from the start. I send out notifications 2 minutes before we go live, only if we're going to be live. I don't send out notifications for premieres, even if I'm in the chat, and that's just because I want to limit, I don't want to bomb your message boxes. Okay, but Tominoid mentions here, in the movie Don't Look Up, they bring up the pillars, Jacob and Boaz. Yes, the rich guy in the movie Don't Look Up, he's kind of an amalgamation of a Steve Jobs and Bezos and Musk all rolled into one, with a lot of Michio Kaku thrown in there too, I think. But he's the one who says, well, he leads us into mining the asteroid or the comet rather than deflecting it. And of course, it's for profit. He wants to make a bunch of phones. So anyway, in this, he's talking about how mining the asteroid or the comet is the next thing, the next that's going to drive humanity's evolution. And in this speech, he says that humanity is going to pass through the pillars of Jacob and Boaz into the New Age. Some weird, bizarre, Masonic New Age stuff he was getting into there. It's not a bad movie, Don't Look Up. I mean, it's a satire, but the main thing is this. The public has been saturated with the imagery of stuff falling from the sky. Space Force is doing drills on the very topic. On New Year's, there was a loud boom over Pennsylvania where the bridge fell. About a week later, another psyop we barely touched on there. But yeah, you had this very conspicuous announcement that a meteor was going to hit, and then everyone hears the sonic boom. Super easy to fake. But all the movies on Netflix, all the movies on HBO, pretty much every movie out there right now features space junk, falling space arcs. Space arcs are very popular now. And then, of course, in addition to that, the moonfall thing. And my contention is that, like the movie Independence Day, they need you to have some kind of imagery, a frame of reference for whatever they introduce in the next psyop. So when 9/11 happened, you already have in your mind, if you've watched this movie, and they make sure you see these movies. These are the popular ones. You get the images. So you have a bit of a experience with it, like you drilled with it. So I'm just suggesting now that the public's mind has been so saturated with the imagery of low Earth orbit infrastructure falling that any day now, and I don't want to sound like Chicken Little, but it's obviously in their agenda, and I do think we've been vindicated. Like I said, just over a week ago, 40 probably 42 satellites fell from the sky. All right, going through some comments. Restless Bear says the moon falling is in the time machine too. No, I hadn't heard about that. So in H.G. Wells' story, the moon also falls? Now the H.G. Wells story, Time Machine, also has the humanity divided into the subterranean Morlocks and then the Eloi above ground. Of course, Eloi, El, like Elon, elevated. El, of course, is one of the names of the god of the world cult. The cult of the monolith, this monolithic media control, is in the hands of this group that worships. I don't know if the word worship is correct. I mean, maybe they just take orders from him or it. Whatever L is, whatever Saturn is, whatever this black cube represents, it seems to be the boss. At least you would think so by their own use of this type of nomenclature. But you can see how they'll throw on words like elite, El-eat, Eloi, the elevated ones. Very, very consistent all around. But in that you have the subterranean, underground humans who are sort of subhuman. And then you have the ones who are above. And you can kind of see that's the agenda here. I actually think that's one of the stories they've given us with the mass salvation agenda. The mass salvation agenda is synonymous with the idea of the space age, and of course being elevated. You have to go into the craft to go into the heavens, and to go up into these heavens you have to go through their priesthood and their system. And I'm thinking that the space needle is a very important symbol for this new age, because it's the needle that is so contentious right now, and I think it's all about the symbolism here. And you constantly see this correlation between outer space and inner space. And of course, outer space is the modern replacement for heaven. So what they've done is they've correlated the idea of being elevated, of being raptured, with the needle. So these correlations are not coincidental. They use symbolism, and they tell it in the stories. And they often make these kind of blatant if you're paying attention, but it's easy to call it a coincidence. Like how I mentioned that the space station had a puncture in its arm, like it was vaxxed on a mission where they're doing the vaccinations. I would also say that there's a deliberate correlation being made between space junk and the virus running amok, and the need to get rid of space junk, and the need to get rid of the super spreaders, or get rid of the infection. So circulation and orbit. This correlation was made very clear the day that Russia, and this is very significant, when Putin released Sputnik 5, that was the vaccine for COVID, the first vaccine. On that day, out of Russia, a movie came out, and it was called Sputnik. And it was about alien invaders that arrive through your bloodstream, viruses, that then form a symbiotic relationship with you, and then you are the alien. In fact, that same month, the cover of The Economist, and this is a magazine that we talk about often because of its predictive capabilities, it had a cover called Aliens Among Us. And you have to look at this because at first glance, it says Aliens Among Us, How Viruses Shape the World. Now this came out the same month as the Sputnik 5 vaccine. And this was named for, of course, the object they sent into space, winning the space race at that stage. So then, of course, they come out with the first vaccine, winning the inner space race. So here you have the Economist cover, the aliens among us, and it looks like outer space. It looks like rockets and satellites, but you're actually seeing AIDS and COVID and bacteria in someone's bloodstream. But the subtext here, the real meaning of this is that you, the super spreader, are now an alien. Just like in the movie Sputnik. You are a carrier. You're no longer like everybody else. You're an alien among us. And this article was about how this alien invasion is reshaping the world. Also noteworthy, the first UFO crash site was in a place called Corona Field in Roswell. I checked it out during the first quarantine. Corona was also the name of the first secret spy satellite program that started right after the Sputnik thing. Not secret anymore. They recently released that info, but the concept of Sputnik and beating the space race and then Sputnik the vaccine, these terms are very meaningful, and they've made these comparisons on purpose. McDirtyWork says, I'm usually asleep by now. I love catching IPS live. Yeah, we are going to be starting earlier most nights. I'm about 85-90% caught up on all the work I've been trying to catch up on. AAAA says, I watched a rocket take off today on YouTube. A replay of the NASA rocket just goes up and you only see it from the ground. That's the trick. Okay, so it's a magic trick. And once you see through a magic trick, you just can't be fooled by it again. That's why they try to keep people from even having these conversations, because once you've seen through how they pull it off, you really are having to admit that there is a bit of sleight of mind. It's a trick. It's a magic trick. So you have this rocket go out of sight, out of mind. Then you look to the screen. Now you have another view of it, and it's in space. Well, do you know for sure that what you're looking at is continuous? This is in fact a contiguous piece of footage, or could it be spliced? And I do have, I think, a death blow to the whole space program in terms of, if you want to find a video that should get you to doubt it at a very fundamental level, I would point to, it's one of NASA's own videos. So this has not been doctored. I'm surprised it hasn't been scrubbed, but I guess just not enough people care. Let's see if I can pull this video up. It was one of these shot from the space shuttle. I think it was Endeavour. I'll find the video here in a moment. I'll put it in my notes. But basically it's like this. You're supposedly looking down at the Earth through the clouds at the ocean from the space shuttle as they drop one of their boosters. And so you see this big red booster falling down into the ocean. The problem is it's moving the same speed as a space shuttle. It's not even falling. It's just kind of drifting there. And it moves in a very balloon-like fashion. And it's more obvious because the astronaut, in quotes, is using a handheld camera. So you have this handheld camera kind of shaking, and it gives away the game that you're not actually 200 miles up looking down through the clouds, dropping a big hunk of metal into the ocean. No, you're on the ground filming the sky as a blimp, the shape and size of the booster, gets lost in the clouds, goes into the sky, and presumably, to most people, it fell into the ocean. It's an optical illusion. But what gives it away is you have a blimp recovery jet that they tried to white out in the footage. So you actually have a blimp recovery jet snagging the blimp, disguised as a booster, while these people pretend to be in space when they're on the ground. I mean, that one it's pretty easy to see through. But we don't spend a lot of time here on the debunking, because to me it's like, you know what, if you still believe this stuff at this point, you're just a believer. And I respect your beliefs. You're just not a knower. And there's such a huge difference, but Jungle Jim says, we have a BS media crater in Arizona where people come to visit to look at nothing more than a big sinkhole and a rock that sits in a corny visitor center. Proof for space rocks. Yep. Yeah, well, the Space Needle thing, I wanted to get into more. We'll talk about this as we get into it, but it does tie into this bigger picture, because we talk about predictive programming and how we're conditioned for certain things to happen, inevitable things. One of them, 9/11, was obviously foreshadowed in so many different episodes of TV shows, comics, movies, books. Why? It was psychologically preparing us for the narratives that would drive the next 19 years until they brought out the COVID, which we were adequately prepared for. But there is as much, if not more, of this type of conditioning focusing on the Space Needle than there was focusing on the Twin Towers. So the more I've looked into this Space Needle agenda, or this story that has this Space Needle falling in all these different movies, I'm thinking, well, what does this mean? Are they literally going to take it down? Or is it something else? Like, are they really going to bring in aliens in craft? Or is it going to be an internal invasion, a symbolic UFO alien invasion? And I've come to expect nothing burgers from the powers that be. So I think, well, maybe they weren't ever going to take down the Space Needle, but maybe it was just symbolic of the needle, of the pandemic. 3/11, the date the pandemic started, was foreshadowed in much of the programming. For example, the Netflix series Colony, just look on over to season 3, episode 11, 3/11, takes place in Seattle. And they say Seattle is ground zero for the reboot of civilization. Why? Because an alien invasion. You never see the aliens. Boring. You never see them. They're behind the scenes. They've just taken over the government, made everything fascist, and everything's been destroyed. But you can go to Seattle and go live under a protective dome because the environment has just been destroyed by man, because that's the starting point for all sci-fi. But they start civilization over and they call it the reboot. And I'm like, wait, 3/11 Seattle reboot after an alien invasion? Sounds a lot like 3/11 Great Reset after the invasion. Pippi Langstruff says, in all caps, invasion of the nothing burgers. Yep. Yep, I agree. Invasion of the nothing burgers. And I don't know what it is. Is it that we're too aware and they don't want to give it away? Are they lazy? Because you can't say they're underfunded. Patrick78 says, Klaus Schwab says his ancestor was Nimrod. Find me a quote. There are many dubious things posted about Darth Schwab. I mean, I do believe that he probably is the high priest of Saturn, sitting up there at the UN with his Darth Vader costume. But I've also seen a man that looks like him in this bizarre wedding dress lingerie getup running around on a beach. So you have to make sure it's actually the same guy. But it would be consistent. I mean, World Economic Forum 666, it's all this one worldism, very much like the builders of the Tower of Babel. Rothschild's uncle also claimed it. Fascinating. Yeah, I'd like to see more. Now, speaking of predictive programming, in the movie The 100, or the series The 100 on Netflix, Season 1, Episode 13, so you have 113, the space station in the movie falls. And in that episode, there's actually a painting that you see in this mountain fortress, like in a bunker, where a lot of the art has been preserved, and you see a painting of the Tower of Babel. So the space station falling, 113, Tower of Babel. And this gets even more interesting the further along it goes. Because you have Jeff Bezos going up into space, and I've been saying, the space program is really the Tower of Babel, and space is this new heaven, and now you have this war in heaven brewing, and Bezos going up into space in many ways was an affront to many people. People didn't like the idea of the richest man on earth joyriding up there while we have the conditions that we do down below. And I'm thinking Amazon A to Z, the idea of the Tower of Babel being one language, one world, unified in a journey from earth to the heavens. And the significance of his trip is, of course, now the heavens have been opened. We can all go up there. The rich people can buy their way up into the place. So anyway, I start pointing out that Bezos and this Tower of Babel thing seems to be intentional. And sure enough, the Amazon headquarters, the building is actually designed to look like the Tower of Babel. It's a spiraling vertical forest, if you haven't seen the pictures of it, but they call it the Helix Tower. It's a $2.5 billion headquarters. And the Helix Tower happens to look quite a lot like the Renaissance images of the Tower of Babel. And I don't think it's a coincidence here. By the way, when Jeff took off into space, on 7/20. It was the anniversary of Apollo 11, directed by Stanley Kubrick, and he launched at 9:11 a.m. 9/11, of course, being directed by Stanley Kubrick. Kind of a double shout out. Anyway, if you're looking at the screen, you can see a picture of the spiraling building, the Helix building. Bezos' Tower of Babel. And it's all symbolism with these billionaires, which is the Triple Comma Club, which is why I talk about it. So when you see Bezos out there on his yacht with all his friends drinking wine, meanwhile, their servants are wearing face diapers. It's just showing you these are the elite, they're flaunting it. He's on a Titanic. Then you see Tiny Feet DiCaprio on his mega yacht. It's a Titanic. And of course, DiCaprio is the face of the concerned scientist in Don't Look Up, warning us about what? A comet, which is what? An iceberg. It's a big iceberg in space. And nobody's listening to him because they're thinking about the money. And so then the Earth gets sunk like the Titanic. So they bring out DiCaprio because of his association with that particular metaphor for where the world is right now. I pointed this out 9 months ago. When I saw the trailer for the movie, I said, if they have a movie about something falling from the sky and Leo's the guy warning us, it's a Titanic metaphor, and it's going to have to do with capitalism destroying the world and a collapse of our economic system, etc. And sure enough, it's exactly what the movie was about. It's obvious. It's why they use these actors. It's because of their propaganda value. They got some clout when it comes to pushing the green agenda. They're somehow convincing, even though in real life they're massive hypocrites. But that's the point. They want you to see Bezos as a space cowboy. That's why they put a cowboy hat on him. These guys see space as the final frontier, somewhere to plunder, the Wild West. Tominoid says the Elysium movie has searching grids 3 through 11. Quote, I'm using a full containment order, bad air environment, plus a tool to reset the system. Fascinating. I'll have to look into that. You'll see 311 and 11.3 used around these themes all the time. In fact, George Lucas's first film, THX 1138, was released on 3/11, 1971. And this movie is about a future of quarantined, socially distanced, totally mind-controlled zombies, aka us in about 2 years. And this is, I think, what our future could be. Well, I think this might be the ideal. They even have these booths where they have like a Jesus on a screen that they pray to. I mean, everything is just going through a screen. Everything is regulated by androids, these faceless androids. But again, the movie THX 1138 released on a 3/11, probably not a coincidence. And 3/11 again, foreshadowing in many movies like 9/11. 3/11 is used to signify some sort of major transformative event, lockdowns, stuff falling from the sky. In fact, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, written by, was it Douglas Adams? Yeah, so Douglas Adams, in his book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the whole book starts with the world being destroyed. And this was hinted at in Musk's Tesla Roadster when he sent it out into space and it said, don't panic on the dashboard. Don't panic comes from the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Well, the book. And the movie starts out, maybe the book, but the movie starts out with a whole lot of UFOs arriving in these cube-shaped craft, and they blow up the Earth. Anyway, Douglas Adams was born on 3/11. And then the largest piece of space junk ever dropped on Earth was on 3/11/2021. They carelessly tossed it into the ocean and probably killed a whale. But they don't care about pollution in the oceans anymore. Now it's about pollution in space. But I can go down these dates and show you the consistency. And it's a story that they're telling. And it has to do with, of course, I believe, the major transformations of the world, and we just lived through one of the big ones. And the 311 code was there in plain sight the whole time. And I mentioned the Black Monday market crashes because the market crash that followed the pandemic being declared mirrored a crash from 33 years prior. And it got me thinking about their obsession with numerology, with anniversaries, with the astrology and the timing of events. And so it got me thinking, well, every one of the days of the week ties into one of the celestial bodies in classical astrology: Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn. So I'm like, well, Moon, Monday market crashes. Seems to me there's a pattern here. Like with the Burning Man in front of the White House with the USA shirt. There's some kind of hint being released here, I think. And I'm starting to think that moonfall is not about the moon actually falling on us, as entertaining as that would be. But I think it might be a reference to some major market collapse, possibly with crypto. And last year it was all about Dogecoin to the moon, which was started during the Wolf Moon. So many strange things. Well, not so strange. The people who run this place are pretty strange. They're obsessive about these things. Polecat says Apollo 11 was produced by CNN Films, according to Wikipedia. Do you know how much money Neil Armstrong got paid to do Apollo 11? He got paid $33. These are numbers that they encode into these things. It's like inside jokes. So many inside jokes, I just get tired of them after a point. But in fact, someone sent me a tweet today. I'm not sure what country this is, where you get fined if you're outside past curfew. Here it is. Notice of court fine. Your offense is non-compliance with the COVID-19 test. The fine, $330. The court cost is $30. The fine is $300. So, these 33s are all over this whole corona thing. And you don't have to believe in numerology, just a matter of noticing what's right in front of your faces. And it became very obvious to me, I would say, with the George Floyd event and the specific timing of the kneeling on the neck corresponding to the setting of the sun, corresponding to 9/11. And more recently, as we kind of discussed, the Amir Locke situation about a no-knock policy. The guy's name is Locke. And they opened the lock at 648, a mirror of 846, in the Twin Cities. So it's a mirror of the George Floyd event, a comparable outrage, and it occurs on 2/2/2022, and the guy's a 22-year-old. And his father says, he wants 22 days of peace. So I don't know what's going to happen next with that particular event, but when you analyze that and you look at its brother Benjamin Crump, brother Mason from Lodge 422, like, okay, look, there's too many things here for this to be a coincidence. And so what we're doing here on this channel, as you know, is we're just analyzing the news a little closely, a little too closely for their comfort. And these are not disconnected. Like, this is not a coincidence either. Don't look up. It will hit the planet in 6 months, 14 days, causing an apocalyptic event. A planet-killing crack-up to occur 6 months and 14 days later. So the 614 and the crack-up, this is another one of these hints that is pretty consistent. 614 is the birth date of the comedian, the so-called comedian, Heather McDonald, who fell and cracked her head. 614 is the birth date of the guy that Alec Baldwin shot. And significantly, of course, Baldwin said he wanted a meteor to hit the White House because he hates Trump so much. So he shoots a guy with Trump's birthday, 614. Majorly Trump deranged. But the common story here, of course, is the cracked head, the incident that causes some kind of a a crack up in the nation, and 614, something connected with Trump. There's an entire YouTube channel I recommend, Jurassic Liars 26, which delves into this at a very deep level. And the 9/11 stuff precedes the actual 9/11. The Turner Diaries has been in the news lately. There was some QAnon guy who was an insurrectionist. They called him they said something about a sleeper cell. But he used the phrase Day of the Rope. Well, Day of the Rope is a reference to the Turner Diaries book. So they brought that book back. Well, the Turner Diaries is about white nationalists, which in America, the white nationalists are called the base, which, by the way, is what Al-Qaeda means, the base. So here you have Twitter users calling for this Day of the Rope white supremacist fantasy, not all that different from the Great Awakening, when Q opens the sealed indictments and the Trump MAGA crowd execute all the traitors. That's kind of what they're talking about. So I see Day of the Rope back in the news today. And just as a reminder, this comes out of the book Turner Diaries, written by a guy who was born on 9/11, 1933. The author of the book, born on a 9/11, 1933. This is the book that is said to have inspired Timothy McVeigh, who was executed on 6/11/01, which is like an upside down 9/11. And he was executed at the age of 33. So these are not coincidences. And it's also noteworthy that during the riots out in 2020, they brought out the McCloskeys, which I have to point this out because it was the 42-year anniversary of this book, The Turner Diaries. Again, the author was born on a 9/11. It inspired McVeigh, martyred at 33. Now, I have the Turner Diaries PDF. I have to say it's unreadable. It's laughable. It involves, it's the type of thing that would make, I think CNN watchers would believe it. The people who thought that Jussie Smollett got lynched by people in MAGA hats would find this believable. But anyway, look at the cover. You have the woman in the striped shirt, and you have the man in the open polo shirt, and they have their guns out, and they're fighting the race war. Well, here you have the McCloskeys, and she's got her Hamburglar shirt. He's got his tight polo shirt unbuttoned, and they have their weapons, and they're fighting the race war. BLM is marching by their lawn. Magnus says Turner Diaries is good. I'll have to reread it, but I don't believe in nukes. Surprised they haven't made it into a movie. I'll check it out again, though. I'll give it another read-through. I'll do a review on it. Mainly because it's being brought up by the news media because every one of their agents, their provocateurs, happens to have a copy of it in their back pocket. It's like when a Quran fanatic suicide bomber blows something up, they always have the Quran nearby or it's in the car. They have whatever inspired them. This book is suggested to be the inspiration. A blueprint. It's been described as a blueprint. Slave Rescue Hound says her black and white striped shirt is a joke. Yeah, every time I see her, I think Hamburglar. I think her gun's a joke. It's like, is that a real gun or is that like a decorative lighter? She lights a Pall Mall with it. Let me see. Hamburglar. Yeah, just gonna make sure that yeah, it's the same uniform. He looks slightly less ridiculous. She doesn't look at home with that weapon at all. But the point of it was this too. You're looking at these very rich people in a big mansion and it's empty. Meanwhile, they're surrounded by homelessness. And they are bringing out their guns to defend their property against people who are poor. So they're saying, oh, guns are tools of the capitalists to defend their ill-gotten gains. The whole thing is just to be a story. Then they went on tour. They went on tour because they were, well, for the most part, they were running for office, and of course they were even in support of Kyle Rittenhouse. But everywhere they go, they're wearing the same costume, right off the cover of the Turner Diaries. Then, of course, their association with Kyle and Rittenhouse and that whole trial there should tell you that these are agents, that they were just provocateurs. That event was pretty fake. I still haven't seen Gage Gross-Krautz's arm, so I have no reason to think that it's real. So check this out. This is a New York Post article where you have a white power altar. So apparently the neo-Nazis build altars in their homes. Texas neo-Nazi arrested for planning a mass shooting. So what he has here is an altar comprised of all the flags of, one of them is the Nazi black sun, some kind of ISIS flag, some kind of, nothing occult though, but right there, smack in the middle, Turner Diaries. You got Mein Kampf, Turner Diaries, and then a bunch of guns. Probably a manifesto, maybe the Unabomber thing. But anyway, his name is Blevins. The guy says the guy was arrested for terroristic threats, but basically we're looking at they stopped it before it could happen. They said the sheriff's office posted an image of Belvin's apartment as evidence. They found in his home flags depicting the swastika and Nazi symbols and books like the Turner Diaries, written by the leader of the Neo-Nazi National Alliance, according to the ADL. You know, I had a Hitler fanboy call in yesterday, and I think it's kind of naive and oversimplistic. Like people who put a lot of hope in Trump, trust the plan. Like if you're still putting your hope and your faith in some politician from a century ago, I don't think we can help you. If you're a Hitler fanboy in 2022, you're lost. You're more lost than the people in Japan marching for Trump. That they're everywhere. You know, some people do kind of form these fantasies in their heads that you have these politicians that can save you. And no, Hitler's not going to save you. JFK's not going to come back from the dead and save you. Trump's not going to save you. Michael Jackson's not going to save the children, which is one of the weirdest things to come out of QAnon. Out of everything, the idea that, yeah, Michael Jackson faked his death so he can save the children. Like, I don't know if I'd trust him to babysit anybody's children. And you think he's going to save the children? Magnus says, have you read Mein Kampf? Look, if you want to defend Hitler or Mein Kampf, whatever, it's fine. I'm just saying the perspective that you have is taking a lot of things for granted. Like, do you believe in nukes? Do you believe in the moon landing? Do you believe in conventional history? Because when you're calling things fake, like people will say, well, the numbers were inflated. Hitler didn't kill this many people. Well, then they say 9/11 was real. So if you think 9/11 was real and those people died, then you're usually one of those who falls into the categories of it was the Jews, it was Israel, or it was Bush, inside job, or the war on terror is real. And even that is hoaxy. Do you even believe in the suicide bombers on the planes? So I'm just saying it's kind of it's a naive fantasy, and it's not a true understanding of the world as it actually is, in my opinion. I don't think you can be a white neo-Nazi nationalist, idealizing Hitler, and voting for Trump, and actually be in touch with reality. It's a very world stage position to be in my opinion. But anyway, I mean, I'm open to hearing people's perspectives on things. I've heard a lot of strange things. I've seen a very compelling theory that Adolf Hitler was portrayed by Walt Disney. I've seen another compelling theory that Adolf Hitler, or hippie Hitler they called him, was born a woman. I mean, these are all conspiracy theories. We can compare notes. Jungle Jim says Hitler had hips. Right. Well, this is something else. I had someone else call in, and they wanted to talk about the ballpoint pen and Anne Frank's diary. And it's like, we can talk about that, but it's a very boring conspiracy theory, if true, or if not true. And even if not true, the problem is by just citing that in isolation, now you're in the camp of the people who believe in moon landings and nukes, who also believe that that was faked. So, I don't want to mix pure auto hoaxing and media analysis with taking sides in this or that historical battle. We have to remain objective to really see the truth here. On the screen here, you have DJ Eugenics getting ready to drop the Vades remix. I'm pretty sure that Vades started here. I don't mean we started it here, but that the term Vades. And that's what we called vape AIDS. Because before COVIDs was a thing, people were dying of vaping. Whatever happened to the vapors? Are vapors still dying? Patrick78 says, Tim, do you think the globalists are behind what's happening? Well, when you say globalists, the problem with that is it tends to refer to the left or the statist left, and it kind of exonerates like Trump's not a globalist or the American right wing isn't globalist. No, they're all part of it. It's totally monolithic. The sides are fake. I'm sad to say. Not really. I mean, I'm far over it, but you never did have a hero in the political right or left. Kyle is as much a hero as is Greta. Trump is as good as Hillary in most respects. You may differ because one's a Democrat, but what are the Republicans today but Democrat light? And there is no respect for free market, free speech, and everyone's mind controlled. Everybody's drunk, inebriated on media, on lies, on gaslighting, that it's not like anybody can really save us, and save us from what anyway? Please, Trump, save us from the fake nukes. Save us from the fake aliens or the fake CubeSats. It's a lot of fear that they market. Like, I don't fear the modern flood myth. 737 says, same reptilian cult. I say cult of the monolith, and I find that term to be most appropriate. I think Kubrick has everything to do with it. Not specifically Kubrick, but that's a huge clue. Kubrick is a player. I would refer to him as a world stager, a meta scripter. And I would list him alongside several others. But when you see that there's actual individuals behind these major transformative psychological operations, then from there you can see that, okay, we're not talking about magic or just synchronicity or God. I mean, it looks diabolical at times, like this is some kind of matrix or simulation. But to defer to, oh, it's a simulation because it's so complicated we don't have an adequate explanation, is to fall into the divine fallacy. If I don't have an adequate explanation, I'm going to blame it on something supernatural. And I think that's a way to give them cover. That's a way to say, like a perfect example actually. Take a look at the Wizard of Oz, just as an example of how this psyop system works. They have you looking at the theater of it. The big, scary, devilish green face, the fireworks, the explosions, the booming acoustics, the theatrics. But while the people are terrified, the dog runs right on over to the curtain and pulls it back. The idea being, of course, is behind all the theatrics is actually just a wizard. Just some old man behind the scenes. So I don't think our mass media is anything more than a very, very sophisticated religion disguised as news outlets. I mean, it serves the purpose of news for many people, and they do the news. But primarily, it's about creating a monolithic one worldview. 2020 seals it. The world is introduced to something that they all accepted. A new concept of sin that has the basis of science, and it's called the virus. And it's so clever that even the anti-vaxxers believe in it. So the anti-vaxxers and the pro-vaxxers both believe in the pandemic model. They both believe in this new thing that brought about this new system of regulation, a puritanical revision of our society, religious garments, you got your hand sanitizing holy water. But they introduced this thing as a replacement for the same purposes as the old thing, as the archaic concept of sin. So now you have a modern flood myth in global warming, you have your modern concept of sin in the virus, and now they're promising you digital transcendence, digital immortality. You got your space heaven. Let me go through some comments here. And again, the church, like, look, your church of the day is the media, the MSM, the world, the thing they all agree on. And this is what 2020 showed you. It showed you that all of the churches will shut down for their holy days. All of the pilgrimage sites, everything's closed for COVID. COVID won. Science dominated all of the, not science, but rather scientism, or a religious paradigm dressed up as science. And the scientists have replaced the old priesthood. And of course, now you have your elevated priests in the astronauts who are able to look down from up there. They have God's eye view. They claim to have achieved a cognitive shift that allows them to see the world as one. One nation, one humanity, one fragile spaceship Earth to save. So you have the elevated priesthood who can actually claim to have not seen the face of God, but for the most part they have. I mean, what they've seen, they've been given a view, and they call it the overview effect. They say that when they've seen the Earth from up in space, it's so profound and transformative that they actually have a cognitive shift, like their third eye opens or whatever. Sounds like the usual BS you get from the priesthoods of the various religions. Yeah, I'm a level 33 OT, Scientologist. I've been cured of engrams. You know, this is something. Okay, so this is how I would explain when I say that the pandemic and the virus thing, it's all been a cover for implementing this new religious paradigm. Well, look at Scientology. You have this idea of engrams, where you take a test. You go to a Scientology center and you take a test. Test me for engrams. Well, what are engrams? Engrams are negative emotions that are embedded in your memories, like bad memories or things that you even assimilated unconsciously. So you have all these micro traumas accumulating in your memory, in your on your life track, whatever they have their terminology for it. So it's kind of like sin building up on your conscience. You have a burden to release. And after you confess your sins, you have this cathartic release. You feel better, and now you know you're not going to hell. Well, in Scientology, after traumatic experiences, you would go in and you would get tested, or you would go through your counseling session, which is like a confession, but they call it auditing. You know, a confession where the priest listens dispassionately. Well, auditing's the same. The auditor listens as you describe these memories, and you release the engrams, the charges, the sin, the effects of contaminated environments on your spirit. So you do these purifications. They even have these clever devices called e-meters that read the charge coming out of you as you purify yourself. My point being, if you walk into any Scientology church and you take their test, they'll say, yeah, you've tested positive for engrams. We'll schedule you an appointment to get purified. And then you learn about how, well, wherever you go, you're going to catch them if you're around other people who are carrying them. So then you learn how to quarantine yourself and only hang around other people who are going through the purification process, having their engrams removed at regular intervals. And of course, this alienates people from you, but the whole world is now in need of, and they actually call it clearing. The purpose of Scientology is to clear the whole world. Meaning, get rid of everybody's engrams. So I'm saying an engram is analogous to being infected by a virus, and they are all super spreaders, whether you know it or not, whether you choose to go to the church and listen to those priests. And no matter what you do, you are infected. The way the test works, you can't say you won't be clean. You will never be clean. You will never be fully vaccinated. You will never be fully clear. And I'm suggesting that we're just looking at an ancient ruse. It's just a system of mind control based on superstition and people putting trust and faith in snake oil salesmen and magicians, wizards. Maxwell Cooper says at the bottom of the screen the text was, "This is what Scientologists actually believe." Yep, that's correct. Well, and look, Scientology isn't only some kooky science fiction religion. If you go back a little bit, you can see there is this intersection of minds. You got L. Ron Hubbard, intelligence agent, out there with Jack Parsons, American counterpart to Aleister Crowley, and they're out in California with an actress, Marjorie Cameron, performing sex magic rituals in an attempt to conceive the Antichrist. And of course, Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, Mystery Babylon, New Age occultism, is then merged with L. Ron Hubbard, science fiction writer, who then goes on to create Scientology. But if you merge science fiction with Mystery Babylon, what do you get? You get our space age NASA story, the space program, which is a space religion, really fundamentally no different than Scientology. It's not a coincidence that Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were also part of the Manana Literary Club at Laurel Canyon at the house of Robert Heinlein, the author of Stranger in a Strange Land. You can see here that there was a merging, a cross-pollination of ideas. There was a hybridization of science fiction and the occult. And that became our religion. That's why these rockets, when I point at these things, that's why they're named after dead sun gods. It's because the dead sun gods are worshipped as obelisks. In the night sky, the goddess. I mean, it's all very obvious when you look at the nomenclature from the previous iteration. Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, New Ageism, Egyptian mystery schools, Freemasonry, and then compare to the modern iteration. And the first person to point this out, to my knowledge, was William Cooper from Behold a Pale Horse. He wrote about Apollo 11, and he wasn't a flat earther or anything like that, William Cooper. He was talking about the space program itself, though, as being all ritual. In fact, I think he's the one who figured out that if you take the names of the space shuttles in order, you actually end up with a sentence about an endeavor to discover Atlantis, and all challengers would be destroyed. NASA Masonic Conspiracy by William Cooper. Fascinating piece. I would highly recommend reading it. Easy to find. Here's an excerpt. It's from William Cooper. To make interstellar travel believable, NASA was created. The Apollo space program foisted the idea that man could travel to and walk upon the moon. Every Apollo mission was carefully rehearsed and filmed in large sound stages at the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret test site in the Nevada desert, and in a secured and guarded soundstage at the Walt Disney Studios, within which was a huge scale mock-up of the moon. Now, in this article, he gets into the symbolism right away. And again, remember, the moon is made out of petrified wood, because that's what the moon rocks were made out of. So what else can we conclude here? The most transparent was the faked explosion on the Apollo 13 named Aquarius New Age at 113. There's that number again. At 113. Apollo 13. Now what's interesting about this too is 113 is 73 seconds. The Challenger blew up at 113. I might even have video links to some of these. We'll have to do an entire day on these various immolations. What happened to the Apollo 13 Aquarius? The lunar module Aquarius was jettisoned before re-entry. Anyway, this craft says the explosion was 1313 military time. These are just, again, consistent symbols, and it's not a coincidence that 19 years after the Apollo 1 blew up or incinerated, you had the Challenger. 19 years and a day. Let's move on here. Okay, it says the Phoenix, the new age of Aquarius. The number for this Phoenix is 13, and that's where Apollo 13 comes in. 13 is the number of death and rebirth, reincarnation and sacrifice, the Phoenix and the Christ. Perfected soul imprisoned in matter, and the transition from old into the new. A lot to unpack there, but I would say this. Christ was 33 when he dies, right? I think this is all very much significant to the Twin Tower rituals, where the Twin Towers, built in 68, pulled in 2001, 33 years old. 13 years later, the number of reincarnation, the number of the Phoenix, the number of Christ. 13 years later, they have the One World Tower that opens up on 113. There's that number again. 113, November the 3rd. Not only that, but it's 1776 feet tall, which, I mean, when you get into the numerology, you'll see how it all connects, but that's a second coming reference, Christ resurrection reference. Christ in Christian numerology is 888. You double it, you get 1776. So this article goes through the symbolic language of the Illuminati and its use throughout all the space missions. There's quite a lot here, and this is from years ago, but all of it here is valid, and it's all from William Cooper's expose on how the space program is a Masonic conspiracy. I'm going through some comments here, joined by OB Ninja. Johnny's List. Johnny's List has a link here of Manly P. Hall talking astrotheology. Awesome. I'll look into that. And hey, on the 50th anniversary of Apollo, they projected the Apollo launch onto the Washington Monument. You should watch that video. And then take a look over at the Catharsis at the Mall rituals, where there's a Burning Man ritual at the Washington Monument every year. These are occult rituals performed in plain sight. I would even go so far as to say that the Burning Man ritual is itself a ritual of the Phoenix, the Christ. The Burning Man is the Christ. That's why there were 33 Burning Man festivals from 86 to 2019. Black Rock City, Nevada. And at the last one in 2019, you actually had a 33-year-old turn up dead mysteriously. Now what's interesting too is in 2020, you didn't have a Burning Man because of the COVID lockdowns. But out there in Portland, there was a Burning Man in the form of an Antifa who couldn't throw his Molotov cocktail far enough, and he ran across the street burning. I still got to find those remixes. And then this year, on the date where we would have had a Burning Man festival, you had the Donde release party with Kanye West, where he came out burning as a phoenix. I mean, these dates are significant. In fact, on one of these years, I'll have to look back, because before I really started paying attention to this stuff, I watched a lot of these events, and I noticed correlations. I just didn't know the significance. But I do recall a SpaceX rocket blowing up concurrent with a Burning Man festival. And, it's just at that time I'm recognizing, okay, you're looking at rituals that are basically esoteric in their nature. We're not supposed to see it, but if you know what you're looking at, if you know their signs and symbols. Bohemian Grove, they burn an effigy of a man. All right, let's see here, going through your comments. Look, I don't have any hard opinions on Hitler or any of that stuff. I'm just saying, if your frame of reference is World War II politics, if you still think in that frame of reference, I have to know where else you're coming from. I don't think we knew enough back then. Like, for example, 9/11 truthers were lost until, 2010, 2012? Because up until 2012, it wasn't possible to know the extent of the deception. So you would have been running around mad at George Bush, mad at Muslims, or mad at Israel because somebody killed 3,000. Well, what does it mean when you find out that nobody died? That the planes were CGI? That it was a fireworks show? Who are you mad at now? Are you still mad at Bush? Are you still mad at the Muslims? Are you still mad at the Jews? So all these scapegoat stories are red herrings, and I don't really fall for any of them, but if you're still chasing a red herring, good for you. I'm glad that your beliefs are so, I guess, fulfilling that you're just settled on them and you're not going to change them, and that's the end of it. You figured it out. Read Mein Kampf. Everyone thinks that they have the answer, and I don't agree. And I've seen this in every field of endeavor. Let's see, I'm going through some comments. Tyrone says Hitler was a fictional persona based on cultural detritus that would resonate with labor level Germans. Yeah, I feel much the same way with Donald Trump. I think they're constructed to appeal to a specific demographic. Slave Rescue Hound says Jordan Maxwell sounded like an old actor with partial dementia who still knew his lines. He was tired that day, but he's actually quite lucid. I haven't spoken to him lately, but he does sound like an old actor simply because he's kind of old. And he's very much a showman. I mean, he's a great storyteller. But I think he might be available. I should reach out. It's been a couple of years. The last time I talked to him was shortly after the lockdowns started. All right, let me go ahead and comb through the links, make sure we haven't missed anything. Someone's been pointing out that South Pole is having a future where people are wearing helmets, which is something we've predicted here. Helmets are going to be normalized here very soon. They'll give you one reason or another, but eventually it doesn't matter. But I think the selling point for helmets, in my opinion, it's most likely going to be the air, the environment. I've seen this in a lot of these movies too. The air is not breathable. I can't breathe. I can't breathe is a powerful spell. It's a word sigil. I can't breathe. And this is actually a thing. I've been doing some research into magic as it's practiced today. And sigil magic, by the way, if you like the t-shirt on the screen with the new IPS logo, the wrench, the question mark, and the lightning bolt / infinity, on the chest of a penguin with the raised wrench, I put a link in the chat. It also has an IPS logo on the right sleeve. So this is a new shirt that I put up there last night on the store. So I was reading about this thing called sigil magic, where you write out a spell. Like, let's say you wanted to do a spell to change the world. You wanted a better China. Maybe you want China to be a blueprint for the whole world. Let's just say you want world communism. So you take the word a better China. Now you take those letters and you would just scramble them into something else that you can chant. Something that has no association with a better China. Because you need to get the coded message into your subconscious past your conscious awareness. So it has to be disguised with symbolism. It has to be spelled backward. It has to be encoded. You have to do what's called sleight of mind. This is according to a book. So, and let me bring this up really quick. So I'm reading this book on what's called chaos magic. And I open up the chapter sleight of mind about what I'm describing here. And then I sit down at a friend's house and they're watching a movie called 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag. And I think, well, this is interesting because this book is about how the personality can be looked at as having 8 aspects in one head. And so I'm thinking 8 heads in a duffel bag. And I'm thinking about this 8-fold chaos star where it's based on the idea that your personality is actually very multifaceted and you can use magic to tap into latent potentialities. So I'm reading about this chaos magic 8-pointed star, and then I see this movie 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag about a magician, or rather a script writer, and his script is called Sleight of Mind. So again, I'm opening up a book chapter Sleight of Mind, watching a movie about a guy writing a script called Sleight of Mind, 8 heads in a duffel bag, 8 heads in a duffel bag. I'm like, okay, coincidences. But anyway, the way this works, according to the book, is you would take a phrase and you would you would scramble it, make it into a visual symbol or verbal that can be read. So you could scramble a better China into I can't breathe. So this is where I think media and magic interface. So you have these slogans that are being chanted that could have some deeper occulted messaging. Specifically, I can't breathe is referencing Floyd. And why can't he breathe? Well, first of all, the George Floyd thing is a psyop connected to 9/11, which was, of course, scripted by Kubrick, and you can find a reference to Floyd and Corona in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and a fake epidemic, if you want to go down that far. But my point is, a better China could be I can't breathe could be a verbal sigil to manifest a better China. And what does that mean? Communist revolution. I can't breathe with reference to Western chauvinism, the police, BLM. Well, BLM is openly the vanguard of a communist revolution. You have your obvious China reference there. Then it goes further. I can't breathe being applied to the environment, to the destruction of the atmosphere. By what? Capitalism. I can't breathe because the air is being destroyed. Pollution. Pollution is killing more than COVID. I can't breathe because the unsustainability of capitalism. I think we need a better China. Again, this is what I'm suggesting here. I've got a few other things I've been looking at with regard to this, because who hasn't noticed the ubiquitous signs and symbols, hand signs, the colors? If it's not coincidence, then there's something else there. All right, so anyway, if you want to call in and leave a message, 833-311-1984. I'm open to any interpretation of things, whether you think it's the reptilians, the Chinese, the bats, whoever's behind all of this. Speaking of bats, turns out that Bob Saget was hit on the back of the head with what appears to have been possibly a bat. But we may never know. Bob Saget's family is trying to prevent further details about his cause of death being made public. So he died on 1/9 in an Orlando hotel room, suffering a head injury, and then going to sleep after a stand-up performance, and his family is trying to block more information from being released. Now, to me, I can't separate this from Heather McDonald bragging about her vaccination status and then falling and hitting her head. Again, who here doesn't think that we need to mandate helmets for the triple vaxxed? Again, we don't know for sure. Let's see what else we have. I'm going through through the headlines today. A flat earther claims NASA is pushing a belief in ETs, so when Jesus comes back, we will shoot him. This is from that article with Kelly Weil, the podcast. She was talking about a flat earth conference where they said the ETs are an invasion, so that when Christ returns with his armies, man goes to war with Christ. It's quite amazing how they have these scripts out there and the bad guys are just not going to notice that we already know the plot and they're all going to fall into the trap. It's just too easy to sell hopium. Trust the plan, will win in the end. The best is yet to come. Trust the plan. I don't know many people that are still trusting the plan. But then again, they dangle something out there like Hillary Clinton's going to be arrested, and I see all kinds of memes. Any day now she's going to be arrested. I'm sorry, but she's not really a threatening figure anymore. I feel like we're almost going through a cycle, and not a good one, like a rerun. We don't need a rerun of 2016. We don't need another iteration of Q, second generation QAnoners. 737 says, you all got any more of them blue wrenches? Yeah, I'll hand out wrenches here shortly. Like I said, I'm not in that chat room, but if you want to hang out after the live stream, I will sit down for at least 15 minutes and I will dispense blue wrenches. And they're valuable. I mean, they're not just useful for getting rid of trolls and noobs, but the age of NFTs is upon us. And unlike, we'll say, Melania Trump's NFTs, these ones are actually valuable. They're priceless. It's almost impossible to put a price tag on these things, but if you have a blue wrench, you are an owner of a limited number of IPS blue wrench non-fungible tokens. Now, she's wash trading hers. She has people behind the scenes purchasing her crap art for hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it look like it's worth more than it is. Okay, let's see. The White House COVID-19 team has made an announcement about the crisis. Let me play this really quick.
It isn't a crisis. Something we can protect against and treat. The President and our COVID team are actively planning for this future. As we look forward, we'll continue to enhance the powerful set of tools that we have at our disposal. Vaccines, booster shots, tests.
They're basically saying it's no longer the threat that it was. Not that you should take any kind of comfort in that, because when they're saying this is no longer a threat, which they mean is, what they actually mean is the public is no longer sufficiently terrorized or threatened. Time to bring on the meteors. Now listen to this. This is students at the University of Nevada chanting, "Govern me harder, daddy. Govern me harder, daddy. Reinstate the mask mandate."
Mask mandate! Reinstate! Mask mandate! Reinstate! Mask mandate! Reinstate! Mask mandate! Reinstate! Mask mandate! Reinstate!
Now, you wouldn't need the mask mandate if everybody was locked down at home and socially distanced, but here you have all of these fascists with their fashion statements, not medical protective devices, tightly grouped together, chanting in unison, "Reinstate the mask mandate." Again, I don't think that you should have to wait for a mandate to do the right thing if you're truly a good person and not just virtue signaling. Look, I don't believe in global warming. I don't believe in the I don't. It's my right not to believe. It really is. I don't. But I am probably more socially distanced and quarantined than any of these people. I'm less of a climate hypocrite than they are because I walk everywhere. Like, I'm a model citizen and I don't believe in any of their crap. It just shows you what hypocrites they are. I'm outdoing them and I'm as far from their belief system as they could possibly imagine. Let me play a clip here of Bob Saget foreshadowing his own death by bat, not COVID bat, baseball bat.
So I don't have long to live if these are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed. To be found dead in bed. To be found dead in bed.
He's going to be found dead in bed. And I did look at the report, and I think they try to suggest that he was hit by the headboard on the bed. So he hit his head on the headboard somehow, if you want to believe that. All right, this has been great. We will start a little bit earlier tomorrow. I didn't get to the voicemails, but I will. I'm wrapping up a few projects. I've been asking, what do the anti-vaxxers want to gas the unvaccinated with? Are they not just willing to let them die of COVID? Do they not have faith that their COVID is up to the task? Is COVID not Akbar enough to just wipe out the non-believers? Just seems like they're having a crisis of faith if they want to gas the unvaccinated. Anyway, have a great night. This is One-Eyed Jack and the Shells, Mud Flood, and I'm going to turn this over to the 24/7 stream. I'll have the replay and archives posted shortly. Say hi in the chat. I'll be handing out wrenches. jump to a conclusion that requires a leap of logic, a leap of faith, or an intervention of the supernatural. Clearly, there's no way you could have water in vast quantities moving across vast distances. It doesn't make sense. It would have to already be there. The commenter says, I don't understand how a mud flood can kill everyone but leave the buildings intact. Because gravity. They're inferring a whole lot from photos. We're just going to sink. And the only buildings that don't sink are the ones that have the foundations built down low enough, built before the last mud flood, maybe even several recents before, inferring a whole lot from photos. You can't call someone a mud flooder. Like, oh, mud flooders are people who didn't pretend history. You know, that's what they say. Mud flooders skip science and math. Mud flooders skipped history. And they may go with that. I don't know. I'm trying to shy away from overarching explanations